Hi, everyone. I hope you're all well. Thank you for being here today. I am Lorena Hakak, and together with Solange Gonçalves and Laura Schiavon, we are going to mediate this webinar. This webinar will be divided in two parts. The first is the presentation by our guest, and then we will open for questions and answers. Today, we are pleased to welcome Francisco Pino, Professor Francisco Pino. He will talk about female political representation, violence against women, evidence from Brazil. This paper is co-authored with Magdalena Delaporte, who is here today. Shall we get to know our guests better? Francisco has a PhD in economics from Boston University. He's assistant professor of economics at the University of Chile, is a research affiliate and GeFam researcher. His research is focused on understanding the impact of political institutions on economic as well as political outcomes, particularly in the context of underrepresented groups. His work has been published in the American Economic Journal, Applied Economics, the Journal of Development Economics, and the Review of Economics and Statistics. Hi, Francisco.
Hello.
Thank you for accepting our invitation, and hi, Magdalena, too.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the invitation.
Okay. Thanks for everyone to be here. And Francisco, when you're ready, you can start.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, let me know if you can see my slides. Yeah, okay, great. I'm gonna do full screen. Let's see if that works. Yeah, great. Thank you so much for inviting us to present. We're excited to have a large audience, and this time is, as opposed to last one, is very much work in progress. And I'm sure in the audience there are people that know much more both about the context and about the issue here. So we are absolutely hoping to get all your comments. All comments are absolutely welcome. So let me start. So this paper is called Female Political Representation and Violence Against Women, Evidence from Brazil. It's co-authored with Magdalena Delaporte, who's here. And let's get right into the issue. So despite recent developments and progress in the last decades, we still see that violence against women is a relevant issue worldwide, right? So the data says, this is from the United Nations, one out of 3 women have experienced sexual or physical violence throughout their lives. This is relevant because victims of sexual violence are more likely to suffer from various issues such as anxiety, depression, insomnia, reproductive and gastrointestinal problems, and also it's costly. It has an economic burden, and governments need to to spend on health, security, and justice. I think the estimates these are estimates for actually for Brazil. The loss in productivity due to just domestic violence, it's 1.2% of the GDP. So it's relevant to understand mechanisms that can help reduce violence against women. So this is what we want to do in this paper. We want to explore one aspect of one possible way of tackling this issue, and that is the effect of electing female mayors, and see what the effect is on violence against women. The focus is going to be on Brazil. And I don't need to tell you that this is an important issue there. So I have this number for 2017, that there were around 600 cases of domestic violence per day. and around 1,100 femicides. I think I mean, to put you in context, this is, I think, I had it here, like 48 times higher than the rate in the United Kingdom. So it's a relevant issue. And what we do here to tackle this is we're going to have administrative data on violence against women from the Ministry of Health. We take advantage of a law in 2003 that established mandatory notification of any episode related to violence against women. We do have quite a bit of information. I'll tell you later what we have, and also crucially what we don't have. And we will combine this with electoral data to understand the effect of electing a female mayor on gender violence. Okay, so just to first settle some ideas, right? Why should electing a female mayor have an effect on violence against women? Well, there are at least two reasons why this could be the case, why female mayors can reduce violence. So the first one is that it's well documented that women have different preferences than men, and therefore when they are in a position of power, they might want to enact, different policies, or have a different emphasis on police and prevention of violence, on policing and prevention of violence. And just to give you some examples, so Irma Clos Figueras has a couple of papers. This is using data from India. She looks at the effect of female leaders in education and in health. I think is the other one. I'll tell you more later and when I review the literature. And to show you one about Brazil, Fernanda Broyo and Hugo Troiano have this paper where they show that mayors, female mayors in Brazil are less corrupt, quote unquote corrupt, right? So I'll discuss that later. That's one possible channel, right? The other one is that mayors can serve as role models, right? And therefore empower women to act, to denounce, to defend themselves and to organize themselves against violence. And the one paper we know that shows evidence from this channel is the paper of Lakshmi Iyer and co-authors, where they show that there's an increase in reports, in police reporting of crimes against women in India when a female politician is elected. Okay, so those are the two big main channels that we will be thinking about when looking at if you want, the positive effect. But there could be also a negative effect, and that's typically thought of as a backlash against women when a female leader is elected. There's some evidence of that. There's a paper. This is the one over here. It's a laboratory experiment, actually, that where they show that participants are less willing to contribute to a public good when the leader of the group is a woman. Okay, that's a laboratory experiment, but there's also in a paper by Sonia Balotra, Irma Clos Figueras, and Lakshmi Iyer, they show that women are less likely to run for office after one woman is elected, unless it is the same woman who runs again. Okay, so it doesn't look like, this is again India, the last one I'm showing you. So it doesn't look that women are more willing to run when one leader is elected. Actually, that doesn't seem to be an effect. I mean, there's some effect, but the only effect is through the same woman wanted to run again. Okay. So those are the channels we'll be looking at, and depending on how important is this backlash, you might expect not to see an effect, okay, of having a female leader on domestic violence against women. Okay, and okay, I don't need to tell you much about this, but this I thought was important to mention that, you know, also female leaders suffer from violence themselves. Okay, and this is something I'm very much interested in studying, violence against female politicians, and this is something that I'd love to work on, and I'm guessing the Brazil is an interesting setting to do it. Okay, so a little bit more on the literature. Of course, there are a lot of papers looking at the effect of electing female leaders on many outcomes. This probably started in economics with the paper of Chattopadhyay and Duflo, but this comes from earlier in the literature, in the political science literature. But this is the, I guess, most cited and best known paper on understanding the role of female leaders on policy issues, right? And so there are a bunch of papers that do that. Some find a large effect, some don't find much effect, depending on the context. It seems that the context matters in order to find an effect. But there are few papers that look at the effect of female leaders on violence against women. We haven't been able to find much. I guess there are few exceptions. One of them is the paper by Lakshmi Iyer and co-authors I was mentioning. This is AJ applied in 2012, and they find an effect on reporting. So there's actually an increase in reporting. So they take that as, you know, female leaders having an effect in increasing the willingness of women to act, you know, against violence and reporting the crimes. Okay. And they work on using police reports. This is going to be different from this paper, and I'll tell you later why that's important. I already mentioned the Broyo and Troiano paper. I have it here again because our identification strategy is going to be practically identical to Broyo and Troiano. I think they look at slightly different elections, but the setup is going to be exactly the same. And that's a paper by Laura and Claudio, looking at the effect of the law Maria da Pena that reduced, they seem to have reduced female homicides by a relevant margin. So that's going to be also, you know, here in the back of our heads when we're analyzing the effects of electing female mayors. Okay, so I guess I'd love to talk to Laura and see how these two things interact. There's some evidence of women police stations. There are a bunch of countries that have implemented female police stations. There's one paper that look at the effect in Brazil. And they find that in metropolitan areas, having a female police station does reduce homicides. But in other contexts, that doesn't seem to be the case. There's a recent paper, this is American Political Science Review, JASAL 2020, and he looks at the crimes in India, and it doesn't seem to have an effect there. I think there's another paper looking at this in Peru. I forgot now what the results are, but there seem to be, you know, mixed evidence of having women's police stations. So this is more or less where the literature stands, and let me tell you a little bit about the context, although this I'm gonna go fast because you probably know it better than us. So the good thing about Brazil, lots of municipalities, right? So that's great. We focusing on smaller, slightly smaller municipalities. So, you know, there's this cutoff where you have you know, a runoff when the in large municipalities, basically above 200,000 voters, and below we have plurality rule. So we're going to focus. We're going to even restrict more the you know, the size of municipalities. We're actually going to restrict to municipalities below 50,000 inhabitants. This is well, for practical reasons, but also we think if we really want to push the story of a role model mechanism, that makes sense when you have smaller municipalities. I mean, in large municipalities, it's very difficult to get to know the mayor and so on. So we think if the role model story has some bite, it should have it in smaller municipalities. So we're going to be focusing on smaller municipalities. Okay. Also, because this women's police stations story that I was telling you before, this is probably happening in larger cities, not really in smaller cities. So we want to abstract from that and really focus on smaller municipalities. Okay, and we're going to focus in the elections of 2008 and 2012. Yes.
I think your microphone is doing some noise. Maybe you could use the microphone.
Headphones. Let me see if I switch to headphones. If it's better.
Headphone.
Okay, just a second. In the meantime, I'll tell you later why we focus on the elections of 2008 and 2012. I think Broyo and Troiano used 2004 and 2008, but we will do that because the data that we have for violence will start in 2009. Okay, so let me switch microphones. Let me know if it works better. What about now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is it better?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
What's runoff rule?
Oh, okay. So if you are living in a municipality above 200,000 voters, then you will get a runoff between the top two candidates. You know, instead, in smaller municipalities, the one with the largest share of votes wins. You know, immediately. You know, there's no second round, right? There's plurality rule. Okay. So we have a map here just to show you that, you know, mayors, female mayors in Brazil are kind of spread throughout the country. So it's not that we're just, you know, they're not concentrated in the south, or, you know, that you see female mayors all around Brazil. This is for the 2013-2016 term, though this is, you know, the last term in our sample, but the other one looks quite similar. So here's the data on violence. So so this is the law. The law started. The law was passed in 2003, but data only started, or at least the system that we're using, Sinan, only started. You know, we only have data from 2009 onwards. So basically, we're going to be focusing on these two terms, 2009 to 2012 and 2013 to 2016. So we're going to be looking at these two elections, 8 and 12. Okay, there's another election in 2004 that we won't be using. Okay, and here are other changes that occurred during the period. Okay, so the femicide law, this is you know, typically, so in Chile, I think it was passed more or less at the same time. There was this wave of passing, you know, femicide laws. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so where does the data come from? So the data doesn't come from police reports. The data comes from the Ministry of Health, and is the Sinan, I guess, and I'm hoping some of you are familiar with this, because we would love to talk to any of you who are familiar with this data. So we are using it from 2009 to 2016. And the data, it's quite nice because you can see it at the municipal level and year by year, but data is aggregated at that level, right? So we don't have individual data. We have data aggregated at the municipality level. Okay, so basically the way it works, you can select, you know, all the different, you know, categories you want to see, the type of crime, etc. I'll show you what we have. You know, you can have the place, who was the perpetrator, and so on. But then the data that you get is aggregated at the municipal level. Okay, And that will limit our ability to do, to do some things, but at least for the, for our core results, that works perfectly fine. And the good thing about this data is that it's not, as I was telling you, it's not police reports, right? Police reports, the problem that the data has is that, you have to file a police report in order to observe, count it as a crime, right? But while here, the instruction was either if you have the suspicion of this being a crime against women or some episode of violence against women, you should report it. Okay, so that's nice. That's a nice thing of working with this data, is that you don't not only have things that are violent enough to be cataloged as a crime, or to go to the police, but rather, anything that was sufficient for the woman to go to a clinic or a hospital, or there were other. It could be a health service, not necessarily a hospital, but health in the health network. That was also that is also reported. Okay. Okay. So what we do here, so we start in our empirical strategy, we start by looking at regression, an OLS regression, okay, where our dependent variable would be, any type of measure, any measure of violence against women. Is going to be typically cases per 10,000 inhabitants, okay, and I'm sorry,
women.
Sorry, so of course, cases per, of course, per 10,000 women, and then the regressor that we're interested in is whether there was a female mayor elected, right? So the problem of estimating this as an OLS regression is that it is likely to be biased, right? And the reason is that probably let's think of so female mayors are not allocated randomly across municipalities, and so probably they are elected in municipalities that are more friendly towards women, and those are probably municipalities that are also less, that you are also less likely to observe violence against women. So that's the issue here. And how to solve it, where we use a regression discontinuity design, where we look basically at close selections. As I said, we're not the first ones to do this, and we're not even the first one to do this in Brazil. So Broyo and Troiano do exactly the same empirical strategy to analyze corruption at the municipality level. Okay, so
Francisco, sorry, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
In the OLS regression, you use time fixed effect.
Yes.
Why didn't you use municipality fixed effect?
Oh yeah, you could, yes, because we have repeated elections. You could do this much better, right? You can also do controls that you think are are correlated with with either electing the likelihood of electing a female mayor, or correlated with the outcome. You could try to prove this much more. We stayed here with the basic specification, because we're typically going to show you the basic specification and then the specification with the regression discontinuity, and we're going to try to make them as comparable as possible. But we could also have controls, and I'll show you with controls, and we could also have fixed effects. We don't have fixed effects here in the regression discontinuity design. We could, that's a bit that's debated in the literature, whether you should include them or not, because if you include them, you move a little bit away from the sort of natural experiment, but you could. Okay. But we are going to include controls. Actually, we could include eventually all the covariates that we
that we use to see whether, you know, municipalities are balanced on the threshold. So we could include all of those as controls, and I'll show you. We do have some regressions, I think, now in the tables where we do include controls. Okay, so thanks. Yeah, that's important. So the way we're going to define regression discontinuity, so we're going to have still our coefficient of interest, and we want to look within a neighborhood of the threshold of electing a female mayor instead of a male mayor. So that's going to be the specification. So we're going to so our forcing variable is going to be the margin of victory of electing a female mayor. Okay. And we're going to use the what is for now, I guess, the standard so far, the Calonico-Cataneo anti-tunic algorithm to estimate the optimal bandwidth. And I'll show you we're going to use a different bandwidth for each of the outcomes that we have in the paper. Okay, so that's basically the story. That's the empirical strategy. Tell you a little bit more about sample selection. So I already told you that we restrict our sample to municipalities below 50,000 inhabitants. We are going to use elections where the first two places are filled by a female candidate and a male candidate. Okay, so it's always a female candidate that, you know, gets in first or second place in the election. Okay, and we're going to have elections with two candidates and also elections with more than two candidates, but when the third candidate didn't get too many votes. So this is standard in this literature. You can move this threshold. I think in the paper we play a little bit with the threshold of how, you know, where to put the threshold of the third candidate. And for now in the benchmark, we drop those elections where the third candidate got more than 15% of the vote share. Okay, that's the benchmark, and we get a final sample of around 1,000 elections. Okay, this is the sort of the pool sample, looking at elections in 2008 and 2012. And here in this sample, female candidates won on around 400 elections. Okay, so when you look at this sample, female candidates do relatively well. Okay, when we look at the treatment and control groups, they're not necessarily balanced on average. What we want is that they're balanced around the threshold. But still, even if you look at the whole sample, they are relatively balanced. So for instance, let me show you, these are the controls that we have looked at, you know. So we have population, income per capita, literacy rate, urban, so on, and stuff looks kind of balanced, you know, on average, except for population. So municipalities that elect a female candidate on average are slightly larger. But again, this is not at the margin, this is just overall. Okay, I'll show you later at the margin, and at the margin they're going to be balanced. Okay, this is for municipal characteristics. We can also do characteristics of the mayor, and they are slightly balanced. So on average, male candidates seem to be slightly less educated if you take college. So they're more likely to have secondary education, but less likely to have college. And then they are slightly less likely to be the incumbent. Okay, but on the rest, like particularly notably on party, they seem to be balanced. Okay, that's again on average. But when you look at the balance at the threshold, so these are basically the if you want the balanced regressions, where instead of having violence as the dependent variable, we put any of these controls as the dependent variable, and we run the regression discontinuity model, right? So if these were not balanced, you should see a significant coefficient here, and here they're supposed to be stars. There are no stars, which means that we don't find any anything that seemed to be unbalanced in our sample. Okay, so neither at municipal characteristics, regional level, at the characteristics of the mayor, at the party level, doesn't seem to be unbalanced. Okay, so that's at the threshold. Okay.
Francisco,
Yes.
may I ask you a question?
Yes. You want me to go back to the table or?
No. Okay. Do you know how many municipalities with zero cases, no case during the whole period do you have? Did you
Cases of
check?
domestic violence?
Yeah.
Yes. So
you have. I suppose you have a lot of municipalities that have had no case. I think.
yeah, so I'll show you the descriptives in a second. So the cases, so when you look at cases in general of violence, there are quite a bit of cases, but then when you start, cutting the sample into, sexual violence, psychological violence and so on, you start seeing more zeros. So the data set tells you when you do see an actual zero, the data, but there are some municipalities that kind of disappear from the sample when you start, cutting the sample more and more. And there we want to be as, agnostic as possible, so we don't impute zeros where we don't see zeros. Okay, so when we see zeros, we are sure that's a zero. When we don't see the municipality, we think that they just didn't report for any other reason, so we don't want to impute zeros. And I'd love to talk to someone that has used this data, so I'm hoping that's the right thing to do it. I don't know, do you know?
It depends. For example, if you are working with the mortality data, you can input zeros in the missing municipalities. But if you are working with SINAM data, you can't do that because the system is improving over the years. So the missing probably is a real missing.
Yes, that's why we want to be very careful with the missings. We don't want to, assume that missings are zeros, and that's why you'll see how we do it. So we have the main result, and then for each of the, when we try to get into each of the categories and so on, we take the missings as missings, and we don't impute zeros. So yeah, thanks a lot for that. Okay, so just to finish the showing you the balance, so this shouldn't surprise you because, as I said, we use the same strategy as Broyo and Troiano. So here the sample seems to be balanced, on each side of the threshold. So this is what this test is supposed to show. The idea is to show that there are no weird things going on around the threshold, and things seem to be balanced. So we seem to have continuity around the zero margin of victory. So there are no spikes in either side of the margin of victory threshold, which is good news. So finally, to end the descriptives, how I'm doing on time? Okay, so to end the descriptive, so this is how the data looks like. So this is the main measure, violence against women. So on average, you see between 7 and 8 cases per 10,000 women. So that's a rate that we see on the data. Okay. So actually, on average, you see slightly more cases in female-headed, municipalities. So in municipalities where you have a female mayor, this is again on average. And then you can see the stats here for physical violence, sexual violence, and psychological violence. Okay, those are the cases. So for sexual violence, you see basically around 1 case per 10,000 women. Okay, those are more or less the numbers. Okay, so that's on average. So let me show you the figure that I think is our main result. what I like a lot about this, so wait, let me explain you the figure first. So this is a typical regression discontinuity figure. So on the x-axis, you see the margin of victory for the female candidate. So to the right of the 0, the municipality had elected a female mayor, right? To the left of the 0, the municipality elected a male mayor. So basically, to the left, the female candidate lost. To the right, the female candidate won, right? So you have a female mayor to the right, a male mayor to the left. And so we're going to be focusing on elections that are won by a close margin. So we're going to be on the vicinity of this area. Actually, this graph is already showing you the optimal bandwidth for this regression. So we're looking at elections that were won by 10 percentage points, right? Or lost by 10 percentage points. So these are already relatively close elections, okay? And what we see, if you look at, what I like about this figure is, if you look at this on average, more or less on average, these numbers are comparable, right? But if you look at close elections, there you see an effect. So there you see that in municipalities where a female mayor barely won the election, you see less violence against women than in municipalities with a female candidate barely lost the election. Okay, and I think this is our main result. The confidence intervals are a little bit wide, but you see that these are significant. I think this one is significant at 5%. Okay. So this is our main result, and now I'm going to show you basically tables with this result and some robustness checks, and we're going to be sort of digesting this result. Okay, so this is our main table. This is what I was showing you. This is the main effect. So you see that when we look at the OLS regression, either with or without covariates, we don't see much. And this is, you can see that from the graph, that if you see that on average, there doesn't seem to be an effect. But when you look at close elections, you do see an effect, and the effect is quite large. Remember, on average, we're seeing around 8 cases per 10,000 women, and the reduction is quite significant. We see around a reduction of about 5 cases per 10,000 women. So it's a reduction of about 60% of violence. So that's quite large. You can see this is the case with, without, or with controls. Here we start playing with reducing the bandwidth a little bit. So this is reducing the bandwidth by half. The results are still there, but less precise. If we increase the bandwidth, as I show you in the graph, the results seem to start to disappear because we start to looking much more like the whole sample. This is using a second order polynomial and a third order polynomial. So, although recent papers, on regression discontinuity discourage people from using high order polynomials, so we stay in our specification with the polynomial of order 1, okay? But the results are still there if you use order 2 or 3. Okay, so these are the main results. And what I'm going to show you now is when we start cutting the sample by type of violence, and then we start opening, for instance, here we open the type of sexual violence, we look at the place where the incident occurred and so on. And as I was explaining before, here you start seeing more missings in the data, and we are not coding those missings as zeros, so we stay with the zeros when we actually see a 0 in the data. Okay, and that's why the observations are going to start dropping. So you see that we see less observations in the data. So you would think, that the effect would, this would add up as we move from type of violence, but this might not add up because we start seeing less observations in some of these regressions. Okay, so when you open this by type of violence, you see that it seems to be throughout the type of violence that the effect happens, right? So here you see a smaller coefficient, but actually the mean of the dependent variable is also smaller. So if you look at the effect is still around 60%, okay? Similar psychological violence and physical violence. And keep in mind that people can mark more than one, right? So they could mark sexual, physical and psychological violence at the same time. Okay. Then we can open by type of sexual violence. There are many categories here. We are highlighting harassment, assault, and other contains all the rest. Okay. And the effect again seems to be throughout, although with less precision for harassment and assault. But you also see the effect is more or less constant throughout, around 60% reduction in municipalities with female mayors. And then when you start opening it by the place where it occurred, you have many categories here again. And we try to code when things happen at home, when things happen on the street, and also public places means bars, restaurants. Correct me if I'm wrong, Magdalena, here. Other public places where supermarkets, stuff like that, right? Yes. So, okay. Schools, yes. And there we see that the effect seems to be concentrated either on the street or at home, not really in public places. Okay, so that's where we see the effect happening, which might lead us to think a little bit about the channels, which I'll mention later. When you look at the perpetrator, so we have many codes. Again, here we're trying to group codes, so partner or ex-partner, if it was a relative or other, and throughout again we see an effect. When we look at the type of weapon, whether it was just physical aggression, gun, or another object, it seems that the effect is here with a physical aggression or gun, not much of object. Although we don't know what really to make out of this, right? It's difficult to say much about this. Severity, so here we lose a lot of precision. So the coefficient is still negative, but we lose precision. We want to see whether the consequences were, ambulatory or require hospitalization. Here we don't have much power, so we lose precision. Okay, so this is about one more thing I want to show you. This I like a lot this figure. This is looking at the coefficient by age group, and we see the effect concentrated in women between the ages 15 and 39. So these three groups of women is where we actually see the effect more concentrated. So the coefficient is negative throughout, but it's really significant around these three age groups. Okay. So how much time I have? Maybe around 12 minutes. Yeah. Okay. So that's great. That's probably more than enough to try to discuss the mechanism. So here, as I told you, we have two possible mechanisms: the role model or the sort of policy mechanism. And we think that the effects we're finding are probably consistent with both. We are more inclined to think that this is due to women enacting different policies, but you'll see now what we have, and I'd love to hear what you think, but it's going to be difficult to really, say, okay, this is really policies and it's not the role model, the effect of role model. Okay, so the first one I want to show you is that the effect seems to be concentrated towards the end of the mandate. So if you run the regression, but now splitting the sample into the years in office, you see that the effect really happens towards the end of the mandate. Okay, and that to us kind of signals that policies take place to implement, and therefore you should expect, if you really believe in the policies mechanism, this should really happen towards the end of the term. But of course, if the role model effect is there, you also might think that people are getting to know the mayor over time, and then probably also have an effect that towards the end. Though if it's really oh look, they elected a female mayor, and now I'm going to be more empowered to report crimes, you could think that these effects should take place also at the beginning. So that's why this, we think, points towards the policy mechanism, but again, we cannot really rule out the other one. The other thing we do is we split the sample when between city councils that had more women in it. Okay, so what we do, we split the sample with municipalities where the number of women in the city council was above the median, and the municipalities where the number of city councilors was female city councilors was below the median. The median is, Magdalena, correct me, around like 12%.
11, yes,
11%. Yeah. So it's quite low. Okay. So maybe we could do this differently. We could do like a dummy for having just one female councilor or something like that, but results should be more or less similar. And again, here what we see is that the effects are really where there is where there are female councilors, female city councilors. Okay, so that to us again signals something towards the policy mechanism, because you might need some support from other women in order to implement policies targeting female violence. So that's why we think this again goes towards the policy mechanism, but we cannot rule out that having more female councilors also might have a role model effect. Finally, we try to see whether there are other policies happening. This might be okay, the female mayor is implementing a whole bunch of things that are favoring women throughout. That doesn't seem to be the case. So if you look at other type of deaths, there's no effect. You might think, okay, the mayor is implementing a whole campaign of female health and so on. That doesn't seem to be the case. And there's also no effect for males. If you think that this is a campaign for violence in general, we're going to stop violence, it doesn't again seem to be the case. Even if you look at sexual violence towards men, this doesn't seem to be the case. This is specific towards something towards violence against women. Okay, so those are the three things we have explored to try to understand the mechanism. We think they point towards the policy mechanism, but we cannot rule out the role model mechanism. So let me conclude by mentioning that we try in this paper to look at the effect of electing female mayors on violence against women, and what we find is that overall electing a female mayor reduces by more than 60% violence against women, in particular women aged in groups, I should say here 15 to 39. The largest reductions seem to be on psychological violence and on violence perpetrated by the partner or the ex-partner. We think the violence is consistent with both channels we have mentioned throughout the paper. We tend to think it's more consistent toward the policy mechanism. Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you, Francisco.
And now I take notes.
Okay, I will open for discussion, and then Laura is going to say something, and then Solange. Can I ask just a very short question about the age? You said that the female mayors elected reduce the violence against women, especially between 15 and 39 years old. What's the frequency when you look at the data of violence against women, your data? What's the frequency of the violence by age?
Yeah, I know where you're heading. I don't, do you recall, Magdalena? I think we've seen we wanted to see these trends to see where, yeah, I know what you mean. So where is violence more concentrated, right?
Yes.
Is it in this age range or not? I would guess I'm working, I think I mentioned to you, I'm working on other projects of violence. Well, this is domestic violence. I'm working on domestic violence. This is for the case of Chile, and it seems to be concentrated on those ages.
Okay.
You tend to see a slight decrease in violence, as you move along the age groups, but it's not sudden. Okay, so it's not that it's really, so it decays over age, but it's not sudden. And I don't know, Magdalena, if you have the numbers on the top of your head.
No, I don't have the numbers, but I do remember that the age group between 15 and 19 years old was the largest. So
The largest.
yes, it was the violence against women between that age group was larger than compared with the other age groups. I don't remember by how much bigger, but yes.
Okay. Okay.
This is something we should have, and we should
Yes.
know. So
Yes.
thanks.
Okay. Laura, do you want to?
First of all, congratulations. The paper is super interesting and super important to discuss the whole of female majors. I noticed that you were super you wanted to know more about the data, right? So yeah. First of all, I have good news. I think you can test whether there was an increase in the number of special bodies in municipalities. We have this data for specific years. The IBGE, I don't know if you know, our National Bureau of Research, they conduct a survey called Munich. And for some years, we have data on whether the municipality has special bodies like women's police office, special house, to receive
Shelters,
the
yeah.
women. Shelters, yeah, exactly. That's and we have this information, right? I think that nothing changed. Okay, in our paper, the paper about La Maria da Penha law, we show the evolution graph of these special bodies, and we don't find a sharp evolution. Okay, so I think that was not the mechanism. The creation of special bodies don't explain your results. Okay, but you can show, right, that it's not occurring for sure. I think it's quite interesting. And okay, another point about the SINAM. Okay, the SINAM is a system that improved a lot over the years. So for sure, it's not a source of bias for your main results, for sure, because there is no reason to believe that the change, the jump you find is driven by the data set, for sure. But maybe the evolution of the data set over the years might be biasing your results. That depends on when you analyze when the effect occurs, right? Maybe do you know that results in which you evaluate? Sorry.
Yes, the effect is at the end of the term.
Exactly. Maybe these results might be underestimated. I don't know. Maybe, because probably you observe an increase in the number of reports in this now. Probably you can test.
Laura, let me quickly ask you. So, do you know? So, what was it? Was it that municipalities were being added over time, or that they were more thorough in terms of like, asking the questions or including the data? Do you know?
I've read I've already looked for these answers, and I have no clear response. Sorry. Maybe you can check what's occurring in the
True. We can actually, yeah, we can actually plot, or we could do a robustness where we stay with municipalities that reported throughout the period or something like that. That could be one alternative. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, that's an idea.
Laura, can
yeah.
I add a comment? You
Yes,
said
sure.
that maybe we have there is a bias when you are looking each year in the result, but even in the second term, do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
the system is improving a lot over the years.
Okay.
If you were looking, if your source of variation was related to the, was related to the evolution, you know, if you were exploring the evolution, the signal would be a problem. Okay? The signal is not a problem because you are exploiting a cross-section variation. So
Right.
it's not a problem. And also, I'm not sure exactly which measure of home sites at home you used. Did you use home sites? Deaths that the death occurred within the household?
Yes, but that's caused by an aggression. It's like a category. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a category when you download the data. So yes.
I see. Yeah, because in our paper we exploit a specific measure that is more precise than this one. That is homicide that occurred as a consequence of an aggression that occurred within the household. So we obtain
one.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So the aggression occurred within the home. Oh, yes. Great. Yeah. Perfect.
Yes, because it's the only one that can remotely be related to domestic violence. Any death, it's too wide to consider all the deaths occurred at home. So yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, because when you try to extract the data from the tabnet, from this website, the website only provides one type of measure. That's the time. That's the death. The person, the death occurred within the household.
Yes.
But when you extract the microdata, you can use a more precise, more precise measure. When you extract the microdata, they provide you where the aggression occurred. So, for example, we can consider deaths that occurred in the hospital, but the aggression occurred within the household.
Okay.
You know?
Okay. Yes, I didn't understand you at first.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. And at least for my results, this measure for me in my paper, it was more precise. Okay. Because we have a lower number of zeros.
Definitely.
About data, that's the point. I think we can talk later more about data. These are the main considerations. But I can talk more if you want.
Laura can continue. I don't have questions at this point, so I don't know if Laura wants to continue, or we can open to our audience. I don't know if people can ask directly to Pino, and so we back to Laura. I don't know. So Isadora here have a comment. Francisco Magdalena, she recommends a paper for us. So we have here the link. You can copy here, and I don't know, people, if someone wants to ask directly for Pino, or you can put your questions here in the chat and I can ask. Isadora, do you want to have some comments here?
Hi, Solange. because my
Hello.
English is not really good, so I don't know.
Okay.
First year of master in USP, and I'm also studying domestic violence. And recently, I have read this paper, which I found really interesting, about the effects of female officers on crime reporting and domestic violence. And the data is from USA, so I don't know how we could translate to here, but it's really nice, and congratulations for the work.
Thank you so much. I think I haven't seen this paper. Yeah, it's it's super recent.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so thanks a lot. Yeah.
Yes. You're
Definitely
welcome.
have a look.
Thank you, Isadora. And I don't know, Laura, you can continue. We don't have questions here, so we can continue your comments.
Okay. I would like to discuss with you if you think that if you are considering if the election of a female major might be changing the probability of reporting. I mean, you are supposing that it's increasing. I don't know. I suppose that the election of a female officer probably increase the probability of reporting if you are thinking about policies. You mean role model, this idea. And I suppose that you are stimulating the reporting. And so maybe the reduction was greater than the reduction you estimate, right? But on the other hand, we might think that, I don't know exactly why, the public servants might have an incentive to reduce the report. I don't know. Maybe they think that it would be bad. The female major cares a lot about domestic violence or violence against women, and they don't want to report. So in this case, it's a real problem, right, for you. I don't know. I think you could discuss more about this. That's my main point about identification.
I take that one, and so we thought about the issue of reporting. We think that's one strength of the data is that it's not police data. That I would be very worried about reporting, but still here, right? So you might think you might not go because you had a concussion, but you would go if you have a cat, right? Of course, and then you worry about that. I think if the election changed that so that you think that people would report more, then this would be a lower bound, right? So that's good. If it is the other way around, so you're saying that maybe so I was thinking, so if I understand correctly, the idea of this system is that to follow the cases over time, right? So if the burden goes to the guy that reported the issue, yeah, that is a big problem. But I'm guessing that might not be the case, because this can be reported anywhere, right? So this can be reported in a shelter, in a clinic, in a hospital, and so on. And I would doubt that they are the ones that are in charge of doing the follow-up. So that, but I totally get what you're saying. So basically mentioning in the paper. So thanks a lot. Yeah, this is what I have to do.
Maybe you can try whether if the number of hospitalizations by aggression, by unintended aggression at all, unintended aggression, or this type of measures, if they change it. It's interesting.
That's a good idea.
Check.
You mean aggression, but not aggression against women, right? Because then that would be a problem. Those could go down exactly because of the mechanism.
Actually, I suggest two measures. The first would be female aggression against women. Do you think? Why do you think it wouldn't work.
No, I think because I thought you wanted to see if there's an issue with reporting, right? So if we see aggression against women and we believe that the mechanism, works, so you should see a reduction.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can check if you see a reduction in hospitalizations by aggression, and also you can see if you can check if you see a change in the number of unintended aggression. Then if at least we have this information on mortality system. I don't know if we have this information on SINA. The unintended aggression is a classification of the aggression. So it's not a homicide, it's an accident, okay? So it's a possible test.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, I think so the hospitalization, Magdalena, this is what we have, right? I think that we do include that. Let me see.
Yeah, but the SINA only contains information about what they classified as domestic violence.
I see. And you mean overall? Okay, thanks. Nice, very nice, thanks.
Can I ask you a question about the data about homicides and female homicides? Is in SINA too?
So I think Magdalena knows more than me about that.
Yes, no, it's not in SINA. It's in something called like Sistema de Mortalidad.
Okay.
That it's like the same page, but it's another link. But it's the same. It's also from the Ministry of Health, that gets the report from the municipalities.
But you have the cause of the death. In
Yes.
Yes. And when you run OLS and RDD with female homicide, you find that the negative effect, but not statistically significant.
Yes. So it's not significant.
Okay, because in this case we are sure that you don't have problems with reports.
Homicides. Yeah, we thought about that. Yes, that's true. That's true. Let me see. These are the slides.
Okay.
Sorry, can you see your slides now?
Yes.
Okay. So we had homicides somewhere.
I don't know if we included in the.
They want to be here. Yeah. Yes. You're right. Yeah, I think. Yeah, no, they're not here.
Yes, actually, the homicide is not a very good output, I think, for violence against women, because the ideal will be to have femicide, but because we don't have this data since 2008, 2009, we had to use this one. But I don't think that it's a good measure of domestic violence against women. Because of this, it can be biased.
But you can try to, I don't know if it's available, but you could try to see the female homicide where it happens at home. And
yes, that's what Laura suggested. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Laura, any more questions? No. We have here one question from Emerson. He's without a microphone, and he asked here, your results are stronger in the end of term. Maybe it would be good to try to understand better why this is happening. Yeah, why this is happening? This strong effect in the end of the term.
So if the policy mechanism were the one that is operating, I would expect that to be the case, right? Because policies do take time. That's our take. It's hard to do. It's hard to do much more, but I take the point of Laura that if the data, you know, is improving over time, that we have to check. So the only thing that I have in mind is to, you know, if municipalities were being incorporated over time, then we might want to restrict municipalities that were throughout the period. Or yeah, there we have to think about if this is the case, you know, if the data is increasing, is the counts are increasing over time, this is a worry. Though we can also see if these trends are, you know, different with in municipalities with a female mayor than in municipalities with a male mayor, because that's a big source of bias. If reporting were different, you know, if reporting to Sinan were different in these two types of municipalities, that would be a problem.
Okay, so I think we don't have any more questions here in your chat. Congrats for
so much.
Pino and Magdalena. Thank you so much for being here with us. Laura also commenting the paper.
No, thanks a lot. Thanks so much for the opportunity. It's been super helpful. If you have any more questions or suggestions, please email us. We are absolutely open to get more suggestions. And
Joanna have a question here, Pino.
Oh, yes,
Joanna, you can turn on your microphone or.
Hi.
Yeah.
Are you listening? Yeah.
Yes.
So thanks for the last minute question. I just would like to congratulate for your work, which is very, very nice. And I was wondering if maybe female mayors, if maybe they improve the health system for women as a whole. So maybe it could be interesting if there is some results on variables, on outcome variables related to health, to women health. So for instance, maybe for pregnant women, I don't know if you have this kind of data in this SINAM, but maybe it would be interesting if there is like an effect on the health system for women as a whole. So I don't know, maybe like the time, like the number of visits that a woman that is pregnant do to the health system. I don't know, like this kind of thing that maybe could that maybe you could like measure that the health system is improving for women.
Yeah,
because this could be like a mechanism.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks a lot. And then this is something we thought of including, and I think Broyo and Troiano included in their paper, and they do have some results on that. I think I'm trying to scroll through the paper, and I think they don't find much. They look at, well, they do find some effect actually, prenatal visits and non-premature births. And they find some effect. It's not exactly the same in election year, so we should run this again. And this is also a different sample because they have different restrictions on the sample, and they do seem to find some effect on prenatal visits and premature births. So if these results, you know, mimic in our sample, it could be that you know, the policies are broader, right, than only violence, but it might be more on well-being, on well-being of women. Yeah, no, that's a good suggestion to include in the paper.
Okay. Any more questions? Oh, I think I'd like to thank Francisco and Magdalena. The paper is very good. Thank you for being here today, you two. I'd like to thank everyone for their participation. And I wanted to tell everybody that the next webinar is on November 27th with Luciane Pereira from Getúlio Vargas Foundation and GeFam, and she'll talk about family economics and economic growth. And on December, I think 4th, this is going to be the last webinar of the year with Jeanne Lafortune, and then only in 2021. So hope to see you all in the next 2 webinars and then next year. Okay. Bye-bye, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Have a good weekend.
Thank you for the questions.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.